Oh my God. Dude, have you seen this interview? This shit is crazy. First off, Paulina Luna is dressing like a Mormon. What is she doing, bro? She's got this Mennonite look going on now with the giant side pony. But dude, watch what happens in this interview. I'm serious. This interview is very outlandish because everything she says is just a complete lie. It is completely made up. She goes on a major news network and she starts like bringing these crazy lies about Marco Rubio and insane shit. But this interviewer just absolutely demolishes her. And so I guess the thing that's really intriguing to me about this is how we are getting to a level of media insanity where the Republican Party, they're operating completely outside reality. Dude, I don't know what's up with the costume, right? The costume is very strange. You know what I mean? Like, what is with this look, bro? And Dorothy, dude, she does have a little bit of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Okay? This is bizarro world.
It is interesting to note that most mainstream sources are not pointing out the fact that Maduro, if you want to talk about ultimately why the United States has done what we've done aside from him being literally a narco trafficker, actually put out an active hit on Marco Rubio when he was a then senator. And so you're seeing that the government of Venezuela currently, I do think, has still a propaganda campaign in effect to try to make it look like what the United States did was wrong. But ultimately, again, it's the perspective of this administration to get in, ensure that the person who is rightfully elected is put into power, and then ultimately bring our guys back home. I don't necessarily think it's a long-term plan in staying there, and I certainly would not support that. But I do know that this president had made numerous efforts to reach out and talk directly with Maduro and his, if you want to call it an administration, which, again, I don't think that Maduro was legitimately elected. And ultimately, I do think that the Secretary of State is doing exactly what he is doing to further our efforts and our safety for the American people.
Do you really feel that the president is focused on free and fair elections? Because in his presser this morning, he used the word oil 20 times. He mentioned wealth 2 times. He mentioned drugs 4 times. But he said the word democracy 0 times. He said free or fair elections 0 times. He didn't really make his major speech to the country this morning about the freedom and liberty of Venezuelans at all.
Well, you know, I did watch his press conference, and I'm not the president's speechwriter, but what I will tell you is when he was pointing out the fact that Nicolas Maduro is actively a narco trafficker, that he ultimately is responsible for the death of many Americans. And again, I don't know why the mainstream media is not talking about this, but when Secretary Rubio was a senator, Nicolas Maduro put out a hit on the secretary.
Dude, now that's the second time she's laid into this hit on fucking Rubio, boss.
So as far as I'm concerned, even if we did play on the,
we know that Maduro is not a good guy.
Play on the same parallel as the international courts, they would also say that that's literally an act of war to do against a sitting Secretary of State. But the point would be is that I believe that the president absolutely has an invested interest. Look, we don't need Venezuela's oil. We have our Permian Basin. We're perfectly good to go here. But ultimately,
yeah, we don't need it. That's why Trump said it 20 times.
Again, I think President Trump is doing will stabilize the United States for generations to come, and it will ultimately be responsible for many Americans not dying from fentanyl overdoses, etc. It has been.
Oh, fentanyl! Dude, guys, no fentanyl comes from Venezuela. No fentanyl. 0 fentanyl. No fentanyl. Here it comes, though. Here she is about to get clowned.
Interesting to note, though, that you're seeing the president and many countries that have been run by cartels, for example, Mexico, react in a negative light as opposed to countries like Argentina, for example.
Okay, so 2 things. Did you read the indictment that was unsealed by Pam Bondi?
I read some of it, and I know on, I think it's one of the first pages that cocaine is referenced.
Okay. Fentanyl is not mentioned in that, and neither is this alleged hit that you're talking about, Nicolas Maduro putting out on Senator Marco Rubio. Why would the Trump administration not indict him on what you're making to be a huge claim by an adversary of the United States against a sitting U.S. senator? Why do you think they didn't?
It's definitely an important piece of information, and I will make sure that I follow up with Todd Blanche and suggest that they try to charge him for that as well.
I know, but that's not what you're saying. You're justifying the actions of the administration. You're justifying the actions of the administration by citing fentanyl and citing an alleged hit on Senator Marco Rubio. Both of those.
Fentanyl and cocaine and drugs have been definitely trafficked out of Venezuela.
Fentanyl is not mentioned at all in the indictment against Nicolas Maduro.
I'm actually telling you confirmed information. I'm telling you confirmed information. So what I would do if I were you is I would reach out to the Secretary's office and see if Nicolas Maduro put out a hit on him. And I just said that I would follow up with the DOJ. I'm just telling you it's not mentioned in the indictment,
and I'm asking you to explain why it's not mentioned in the indictment.
Department of Justice.
Let's take a moment here to just marvel. Anna Paulina Luna, the story she wants us to believe is that Maduro took out a hit on Marco Rubio, which was an act of war, right? Supposedly before he was Secretary of State, mind you, when he was a senator. And it's about protecting us from fentanyl. And then there's this indictment from the fucking Attorney General that, of course, doesn't mention fentanyl because no fentanyl comes from Venezuela. And conveniently doesn't mention this supposed hit. So the act of war that is the reason we went in there and kidnapped this guy has conveniently been left out of the indictment that Anna Paulina Luna did not read. Dude. And on top of that, she's like, oh, well, I'm going to call Attorney Todd Blanche and see if he can put my little fantasy story in there. Dude, like, where are we, guys? Where? Dude, Luna Loca. Well said, dude. I mean, she's dressing like a Mennonite and just streaming straight bullshit. Okay? Straight bullshit.
I don't know. I don't work at the Department of Justice, but I think that would be a good thing for you guys to follow up on.
Do you think maybe it's not a real thing do you think it's maybe not a real thing that they have any evidence to substantiate it?
No, I don't think that it's not a real thing. I think it definitely happened, and I definitely confirmed it with two separate people before I came onto your show because I wanted to share that with you. And I would suggest that you guys follow up with the Secretary's office because I do think that that's something that the American people should know.
The Secretary has an open invitation to come on the show at any time. I can promise you that. I want to know what your message is, Congresswoman, to your...
Dude, look at her demeanor, boss. Look, she is fucking pissed, bro. Look at her. Dude, she is perturbed, boss. She is. Now, I think she's dressed like this. She's dressed like this, like, Amish person trying to, like, make her seem more believable, right? But dude, she is fucking pissed. Dude, she is. Dude, she raided 𝗙𝗫𝗎𝗄𝗏's wardrobe, dude. Oh my God, boss.
Voters, to people who are part of the MAGA movement who voted for Trump because he and people around him said consistently during the campaign that we were getting out of forever wars. We were not going to be spending American taxpayer dollars overseas, that he was going to be focused, laser focused on making life affordable here. I spoke to people on the campaign trail who believed in the president on that issue, who maybe had scarring experiences or their kids had scarring experiences serving abroad in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they didn't want anything like that to happen. And we're already seeing that some of them are fearful that what we heard described earlier today, if the U.S. is running Venezuela for a certain period of time, not indefinitely, if the U.S. is going to have to worry about transporting oil, sort of resetting up refineries there, that's going to require a lot of boots on the ground. Is it not?
Well, look, I'm a United States Air Force veteran. My husband was shot in Afghanistan, so obviously we're not for forever wars. However, from my understanding, the president was talking about private investment. So I obviously am not in the administration, but based on his own statements, I would assume that that's not taxpayer dollars, that that's actually.
But what's your message to voters who say this is not what I voted for?
Aside from that, I'll get to that in a second. Aside from that, this time last year when President Biden was still in office prior to the November elections, we actually had oil in Pinellas County over $3 a gallon. Now it's under $2 and some change, right, in various areas. We saw egg prices that have now gone down. And what I will tell you is the president's perspective and this administration's perspective is peace through strength. And your sons and daughters will not be drafted into another foreign war. But aside from that, literally a few weeks ago.
Dude, what is she talking about? Dude, I'm tired of this mentality that if Yeah, egg prices are down from when they were like 500% higher than they were, right? Steak prices, dude, the last ribeye I bought was $28 for a fucking ribeye. No, that was not at a restaurant. That was a ribeye that I bought and had to cook myself. Dude, I am so tired of thinking that like a dollar a gallon gas. I mean, how many gallons of gas do you use in a year? Okay. What do you get? You get like, I don't know, 10 gallons of gas a week, $10 a week you're saving, right? You know what I mean? I mean, $15 a week. If you fill up once a week, you're saving $15 a week. That means for a year, it's like $700. Dude, that's nothing. That is not worth like spending $1 trillion in Venezuela for. Okay? This idea that we are even materially saving a huge amount of money with gas prices is ridiculous. Okay? You're maybe saving $1,000 a year, and yet we're like gas prices. And in fact, if you buy a hybrid, you're not even affected by this. But like, dude, you save $1,000 a year, but then your groceries are 30% more. You have just lost a ton of money. And yes, gas is cheap because no one's traveling. No one's using it. Nobody's going out. Nobody's doing anything because we're all just sitting here wondering how long our country has left before we're fucking speaking Russian here.